Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first podcast of The Vulnerable Woman. Hi, guys. My name is Tara Lewis. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter. But most importantly, I am here to be the vulnerable woman with you. This is our very first episode, and I'm so excited to be here. So please forgive the nerves and things like that. This is my first time ever stepping in front of the camera to do this. But this is something special that God had kind of put on my heart to do. Vulnerability has opened up so many doors for me, and it's been just an exciting time. So I just want you to join us and open your heart and be vulnerable with us today. And just let your guard down and be vulnerable. I'm so glad you're joining us. When I prayed about sharing with you guys kind of my story and what vulnerability means, the first thing that kind of came to my mind, what is the definition of vulnerability? What does Webster's dictionary say of vulnerability? And I got really excited to look it up, and I thought, oh, there's gonna be this like really awesome definition of what vulnerability is. And when I looked it up, I was almost like a little, I don't want to say appalled, but it was a little concerning what the world sees vulnerability as. And so I want to share with you what Webster says about vulnerability, or what the world sees vulnerability as. So Webster's dictionary says vulnerability is to be exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. And it made me think, no wonder people don't want to be vulnerable with one another. No wonder the world has created this scary place about being vulnerable with your spouse, with your friends, even with people in your church. We walk in, we put a front up, and we share bits and pieces of who we are out of fear of being judged, condemned, and it just keeps us being guarded. And I spent so many years of my life being guarded with people. I would give them a certain part of my life, but I would never let them see who I really truly was. And when it really clicked with me, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling her, I said, well, you know my story, right? And she's like, well, I mean, kind of. You've shared bits and pieces with me. And this friend I have known for over 15 years. This is someone that I'm dearly close with. I speak to almost on a daily basis. And she's sitting here saying to me, well, yeah, you've shared bits and pieces. And I'm thinking, no way. Yes, I've told you this. And she's like, well, maybe I don't remember. And I was driving my daughter to school, and I thought to myself, you know, I think I have shared bits and pieces, but I really haven't truly given her the details of the hurt and all the things that I really went through in that time. And so when I got home, her and I used the Marco Polo app to talk back and forth because she doesn't live here. And I got on there and I said, all right, I'm going to tell you everything that happened and all the details. And so I did. And I was on there and I went back and looked at how long it took. And it was over an hour. Once I kind of shared with her what really the deep details of what happened with me. It was an hour long. And I told her, I said, I hope you put this on double speed because it's really long and it's going to take you a while. So when I truly became vulnerable with people, I saw God really open up doors of people wanting to be vulnerable back with me. So I want to share with you what God says about being vulnerable in His Word. It really spoke to me, and He doesn't use the word vulnerability, but He talks about it being weakness, right? And so that's kind of what Webster says. They look at it as a weakness, being attacked or harmed physically or emotionally. But I'm going to tell you what God says about taking what you feel like is weak and God looks at as beautiful, but you have to be able to give that to Him. So I want to read with you, this is from Matthew 26:36 through 39. And this is the amplified version of the Bible, which I prefer because it just kind of gives you a little bit more detail, but there's all kinds of versions of the Bible. You can look up, there's apps. So if you don't like the way I'm reading it, go look it up on maybe your phone or, in your own Bible and find your translation that speaks best for you. It says, "Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he told his disciples, 'Sit down here while I go over yonder and pray.' And taking with him Peter and 2 sons, Zebedee, he began to show grief and distress of mind and was deeply depressed. Then he said to them, 'My soul is very sad and deeply grieved, so that I am almost dying of sorrow. Stay here and keep awake and keep watch with me.' And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground on his face and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if it is your will, let this cup pass away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, not what I desire, but you will and you desire.'" So even Jesus, when he was going to the garden to pray before his death, he felt vulnerable. He said he was depressed. It said that, it doesn't even just say depressed. It says he was deeply depressed. And sometimes when I think of Jesus, I'm like, well, Jesus doesn't get depressed. But he knew what God was calling him to do. And it says that, he says, my soul is very sad and grieved. Like his heart was heavy. And he went to God and he said, "Please take this cup away." First of all, I can't imagine being in Jesus' shoes. I can't even comprehend the way that he felt. But he told the Lord, he said, "Not my will, but your will be done." And he went ahead and he told God, and before his disciples, he became vulnerable. He told them that he was depressed and that he was grieved. And this is Jesus we're talking about. So if Jesus can feel that way and be vulnerable with his 12 disciples, that's what God has called us to do with other people. But in order for us to do that, we have to be able to open our hearts to God, number one, because you're not going to be able to be vulnerable with anybody unless you're vulnerable with God first. And then number two, find yourself a good community of people to walk alongside you through your vulnerability, through your difficult time. If you don't have anybody, I know there are churches and people out there that would love to be in accountability with you. And it also talks about in God's word that God uses weakness and he turns it into strength. And he will take what you're going through, whatever that is, and he's going to turn it into something beautiful. So God looks at vulnerability where you may see it as weakness, because I did for a long time. I thought if I showed all this in front of people and let down my guard, and I wasn't this strong, closed off person, that people would think I was a weak individual. And it caused me to shut down from a lot of people. And it keeps you separated from people and from what God has for you. So I encourage you today to be able to go before God first. Ask him to help you be vulnerable. Where do you need to be vulnerable? And just ask him to open your heart. Go in your quiet place, wherever that is, in your bedroom, in your living room, and just lay before God and say, "Here I am. I'm going to be vulnerable with you. Help to show me what I need to be vulnerable with." So I wanted to share that with you guys before I went into my story. And there's parts of my story that are real easy for me to share, and then there's parts that aren't so easy. The first part's going to be real easy. Towards the end, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But I'm 43 years old, and all 43 years of my life, I have struggled with something. My grandmother had the best saying. When I was in college, I would always call her. I'd call my mom first, and then my mom would say, "Well, call your grandmother." And so I would. And I'd say, "I've got this and now I'm going through this. And, I just got done dealing with that. And now I've got to deal with this." And she'd giggle. And she said, "Oh, honey, don't even worry about it." She said, "Once you overcome one battle, the next one's waiting for you right around the corner." And if that's not the truest thing I have ever heard in my entire life, because once you defeat one thing, there's something else waiting right around the corner. So I'm going to kind of start from, the very beginning of my life. So when I was born, I was kind of the surprise kid to my parents. I have two older sisters. I am 10 and 13 years younger than my sisters. And so I was almost like my mom used to say, their little baby doll. And when my mom had me, she was in her late 30s. She's probably I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that one. And back then, that was older. And after I was born, they started to notice my eyes. So my eyes were always kind of turned in, and I would look a certain direction, but my eyes wouldn't follow. And when I was home a few weeks ago, and I meant to bring the picture with me, and I wound up leaving it there, but my mom showed me a picture of me. I don't know how old I was, maybe 9, 10 months old. And it was a picture, but I was turning my head this way, but my eyes were going in this way. And my eyes were very severely cross-eyed. And my mom said that they wouldn't allow me to have any kind of surgery to correct it until I was 18 months old. So she spent, up until I was 18 months, people always coming up to her and saying, did you know your baby, like her eyes are crossed? And me being kind of the person that I am, I'd probably look at them and go, no, I haven't noticed, because sometimes people will come up to you and ask just the weirdest things when clearly they know, like, duh, yes, I know it's my kid. I see it every day. But my mother has such grace and poise about her. And I'll tell you, grace is something I'm still working on to this day. Grace is a tough one with people sometimes, but my mother has always done it beautifully. And I asked her, I said, well, what did you say to these people? Because I'm over here going, if somebody was saying that to me, I think I'd want to, punch them in the nose. Like, it's just kind of a rude question. And she goes, well, I just said, yeah, we know, but she can't have surgery till she's 18 months and we're going to get it fixed, and then she'd just kind of go on about her day. And we always have a joke in our family with my mother that if a bus ran her over, she'd stand up and apologize and say, oh, I'm so sorry. Was I in your way? And she's probably going to get me for telling y'all that. But I say that because she is the most kind-hearted, graceful, peacemaking woman I think that I know in my life. And I aim to be more like that because sometimes, I have to work on that, especially living here in the Houston area and driving in a car. I don't really have much grace there. So after a while, I went in and my parents took me in for surgery. And I remember my mother, she told me, she said the nurse came out to get me and I just reached my arms out to her and just went. And my poor mom, she said, I just started to cry because she says, you expect your kid to kind of grip onto you like they don't want to go. But she says, you just went. And I can't imagine what that's like. Your 18-month-old child being taken back for surgery for correction on their eyes. I'm sure that had to be very scary for them. If you're out there and maybe your children are going through something difficult at a young age, I can't imagine. And my heart goes out to you. And just know that you're not alone. And there are people that are with you and will pray for you. And just know my heart is with you. I have not experienced that myself. As a mother, I have 2 teenage daughters, and I've been blessed enough where I have not had to experience that. But as a mom, sending your baby back to have a surgery, it's a little bit different than when you send, an adult back to have a surgery. Yes, it's still scary, but a baby, it's just, they're a defenseless little thing that can't speak for themselves, And so they said I came out and that the eyes were great, that it's all corrected, and I had to have like a patch over my eye for so long. And so life kind of went on and my eyes were fine. And then as I got older and started in school, I really had a trouble seeing like the board when I was at school. And so my mom took me back in and the doctor told her, he's like, well, she's going to need bifocals. So this was before bifocals were. Now bifocals, you can look at somebody wearing them with glasses and you can't even see that they're wearing bifocals. When they gave me bifocals, like you saw them, I mean, there's a big old line on the lens. They were probably about this thick. I mean, they were not pretty. But what I do remember is they were strawberry shortcake. That was like my favorite character as a kid. I loved strawberry shortcake. And so I had to wear these at school. And, you know, imagine being a kid wearing these ugly glasses. Now, did I know they were ugly? Probably not. I probably thought they were cool because they were strawberry shortcake. But they were very thick. They were heavy. But it's what I had to do. It's what I had to do. My mom showed me, again, I had a picture, but I wound up leaving it. My mom showed me a picture I had on these bright blue, like this is the 80s, guys, these bright blue overalls with my big old strawberry shortcake glasses and my mom permed my hair. And I had this poofy hair. And, but man, I had those big old glasses on. I was rocking them. And I think I might have been in first, second grade. I don't really recall. And this was the days when you went to church, not just on Sundays. You went Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And if they had a guest speaker, you went during the week. I mean, you went to church all the time. And so I remember that my mom brought me, I think they were having like a revival and a speaker. And my mother brought me in, you know, with her. And back then they didn't have childcare. You know, if it was a evening service, you had to sit in the service with your parents. I remember a lot of times I'd lay my head down on my mom's lap and fall asleep a lot of the times because they would just last so long. And my mom brought me in. And I really don't remember much. I don't remember what he spoke about. I don't remember anything like that. But one thing I do remember is he asked at the very end, he said, I want you, if you need healing, to come up for prayer. I remember my mom, she grabbed my hand and she brought me up to the front. And all I really remember is this gentleman. Again, I don't know who it was. I don't remember his name. He put his hand on me and he prayed for me. I don't remember his words. I don't remember what he said. I just remember at the end, he said, in Jesus' name, be healed. You know, as a kid, you understand, but you don't. And so we went back to our seat, and a little while later, my mom took me back to the eye doctor. I don't remember if like he had kind of told her, you know, to go have them checked, you know, or if my mom just decided to take me in. And so she brought me in, and I remember they were checking my eyes, and I kind of remember hearing the doctor going, you know. And he looked at my mother, and he says, she doesn't need to wear these anymore. And my mom said, oh, really? And he says, yeah. He's like, her eyes are completely corrected. And I remember my mom, she just smiled, and he said, it's a miracle. Those were his words. It's a miracle. And, you know, as a kid, yeah, you get it. I get it more now as an adult than I did then. But those are things that just don't happen on their own. That was God doing the miracle. And for me, that's just the start of miracles in my life. And I feel so blessed. You know, I didn't have to wear the glasses anymore. Of course, now I wear contacts, but that's just because I'm getting old. I will still catch sometimes from time to time, like if I take a picture or something, my one eye will kind of go in the corner a little bit, but not near what it looked like from when I was younger. And that's just something small, right? That's something that starts out small. And I don't know if you're listening, what you're going through. Maybe it's something small, maybe it's something big, but I do know this. It's something small, but it's something big to you. And whatever it is, God can take care of it. And he's walking right alongside you. You just you have to let down your guard. Later on, as time went on, I always kind of struggled in school. I was not like this super smart kid. You know, my husband and my daughters, they are very intelligent kids. and my husband is very intelligent. My oldest daughter especially, she is one of those that she goes to school and she'll like kind of study a little bit, and then she comes home and she'll be mad. Mom, I made a 98, and she'll be upset about the 98. And I'm like, well, did you pick up a book? She's like, no. I'm like, well, hello. Like, do you know what I would have given to be able to do that in school? And she just kind of looks at me like, Mom, you don't know, because that's what teenagers do. But school was just always such a challenge for me. I remember I always had to stay in at recess to either finish what I was working on or to be tutored or stay after school. There was just always something that I just wouldn't get. I remember I'd come home at night and I would just be in tears. I would be in tears because I hated just that feeling. It's a horrible feeling. And my mom, one thing I will say about her is she is a persistent prayer. With her children, with her grandchildren, with, whatever needs to be prayed for, she is persistent. She goes to God on the daily basis. And when her children struggle, she goes to God about it. I remember sometimes I'd be freaked out in the middle of the night because I'd wake up and my mom would be by my bedside. And it was because she was praying. She was praying for me. And as I got older, I'd be like, Mom, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I'm praying for you. And I'm like, okay. But, as a kid, it's just kind of like, okay. And you go back to sleep. And she would just pray for me. And she had a little prayer that she would always pray. And what I remember in it is it would always say, God give her favor with her teachers. And I was in 4th grade, and my mother took me in to be tested. I remember I had to go in and I had to do all these IQ tests, like the puzzles and all this stuff you put together. And I remember being like super frustrated when I was doing it. And I remember just wanting to burst into tears because number one, I was super young. I didn't understand. Number two, I couldn't do what they were asking me to do. I remember it was a man in there that was giving me all these tests, and my mom wasn't allowed to be in there with me. And I just remember even in my mind telling myself how dumb I was, because so many people around me seemed to be succeeding at things that I couldn't succeed at. And yeah, it was just 4th grade, but it kind of followed me, through life. And I completed the tests or whatever that they were having me do. I'm going to assume it was probably IQ tests, to kind of see where I was because I struggled so much. So I finished the test, and I did not know this at the time, but later on down the road, my mom had told me what the gentleman's response was after I got done with the testing. They basically told my mother that I would be lucky to graduate high school, much less go to college. And the mother in me now would have probably said, don't say that about my kid, and I probably would lose my mind. But of course, again, my mother, being the graceful woman that she is, basically told him, I do not believe that. And she says, I serve a big God. And again, she persistently prayed for me. And when she prayed that God would give me favor with my teachers, I did. I did have favor with my teachers. They were always kind and helped me. Now, did I have to go the extra mile? Yes, I did. I had to work probably 10 times harder than those around me just to even get a C. And I always hated it in school when a friend would lean over and they'd be like, oh, so what did you get on your test? And I'd be like, oh, I got a C. And I'd be so excited about the C. And I'd be like, well, what did you get? And they're like, oh, I got an A. I was like, oh, did you study? No. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, I studied for days and got a C. And you did nothing and got an A. But that is my oldest daughter, 100%. And as I kind of went through school and middle school and high school, God would place certain teachers in my life that tutored me that would, I remember I had a geometry teacher that I went and I was taking a test and I went and turned it in. And I guess he was starting to grade it and I didn't do well. And I remember he called me back up there and he says, we're going to start over. And he sat right beside me and he walked me through each and every question. And I did better. Whereas before, if he would have just graded the test, I probably would have failed it. And there were so many people in my life like that God placed there for me. And I have no doubt in my mind that God placed them there. I really have no doubt. Later on, and this is not to give me props, this is to give God props 100%. When I graduated high school, I was inducted into the National Honor Society. I went to the Catholic school, which I wasn't Catholic. I am not Catholic, but they had a very good education system. And most of the time, the excellence, they give an award your senior year for excellence in religion. And most of the time, it goes to a Catholic student. And I wound up receiving that award while I was in school. And, as a teenager, you're not really comprehending the two. But as time kind of went on, I was like, my mom had kind of said that to me, maybe a month ago, reminded me about that award. And I was like, oh, really? Wow. Like, I didn't recall that, but kind of as she started talking about it, I started to recall it. And I was like, oh, again, that's another God thing. Just how often he will step in your life, and where you don't think he's working. And even as I'm sitting here telling you that right now, I'm thinking of situations in my own life where I saw something terrible, but God is taking it and turning it into something beautiful. I wouldn't be sitting here before you had something terrible not happen to me, and God laid this on my heart. I would still be doing what I was doing. But I went on later I went to college. I got my bachelor's degree. I did not go on and get a master's or a PhD after college. After my bachelor's, I was done. I'm just not one of those people that wants to go to school for the rest of my life. But there are some people out there that love that, and props to you. But a lot of that comes from having a mother who was persistent in her prayers. And, I never really understood persistent praying until I believe a while ago our pastor spoke on it. And God talks about it in Luke 18, 1 through 8. And I want to read that parable to you. Sorry, guys, I thought I marked it. Okay, here we go. I want to read this parable to you that Jesus was telling them about and using as an example for persistent prayer. And it never clicked with me until here just recently. So Jesus told them a parable to the effect that they ought always to pray and not to turn coward. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither reverenced and feared God nor respected or considered man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, protect and defend and give me justice against my adversary. And for a time he would not. But later he said to himself, though I have neither reverence or fear of God, nor respect or consideration for man, yet because this widow continues to bother me, I will defend and protect and avenge her, lest she give me intolerable annoyance and wear me out by her continual coming, or at the last she come and rail on me, or assault me, or strangle me. Then the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not our just God defend and protect and avenge his elect, his chosen ones, who cry to him day and night? Will he defer them and delay help on their behalf? I tell you, he will defend and protect and avenge them speedily. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find persistence in faith on the earth? And I look at that and I was like, it says on here in this parable, and this is the part that kind of makes me giggle. It says, because the widow continues to bother me, I will defend and protect and avenge her, lest she give me intolerable annoyance. So this widow was obnoxious. Like, she didn't just go to him and be like, excuse me, could you help me out and protect and defend? She kept going and saying, protect and defend me. I need help. And she didn't just go once. She kept on and on and on until he helped her. Now, did he help her because, she probably he thought she's this amazing person? No, he did it because she bugged him, right? She bugged him. You know how when you go apply for jobs, that's what people tell you to do. Keep calling, keep emailing, right? Bug them, right? To get them to respond back to you. Because I thought, well, surely if I say it to God once, like he knows, right? Like he knows my mind without me even saying it. But he tells you right here, go to him in persistent prayer every single day. Tell him what's on your mind. Tell him what your struggles are. I heard somebody say once, if you're mad at God, tell him you're mad. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to tell God I'm mad at him. He's going to strike me down. Like, no. But he also followed up with, if anybody can handle your anger and you being mad, it's God. Right? He already knows you're mad anyway. Go ahead and tell him you're mad. Tell him you're upset. Tell him you're frustrated. Tell him, I'm tired of going through this. Let him know. Speak your mind with him. And I promise you, he will speak back. He may not speak back in the way that you expect it to, or he may not speak back in that very moment, but I promise you, if you will go before God, in your quiet place, and I encourage you in your quiet place, right? Yes, sometimes I pray when I'm driving down the road, but there is nothing more peaceful and more honorable for me than sitting here in this very living room on my knees before God with silence. There have been days when I've gotten on my knees before God and said nothing, but just told him I'm here and I'm listening, because sometimes I don't have anything to say because I may be so overwhelmed or discouraged. I've got nothing, but I do just sometimes go before him and say, God, I am here. I am laying before you to listen. And sometimes I hear something and sometimes I don't. Now, is it this big booming voice? No, it's through different things. It's through other people. But I give you my word. He will talk to you. He will answer your prayer. Again, it may not be in the way that you think, but it will be what is best for you. And that's sometimes what is so hard for me, is I am such a expectation-driven person that I go before God with my expectations of what I think he should do. And then when my expectations aren't being met, then I get discouraged and disappointed. But that's the wrong way to look at it. I go before God now, try. I'm not saying I am good at it. I'm working on it. But I try to set my own expectation aside and just let God do his thing. Because every time I start to think, oh yeah, okay, this is good. Yep, I'm good with this. There's another wrench thrown in. It just happened to me yesterday. I kind of was at a place where I'm like, okay, God, yeah, oh, I'm liking this. We're good. I'm liking this. And then boom, something else gets thrown at me. And at first I got very upset a little bit and got kind of discombobulated. And then I came home, I went to bed, and I got up this morning and I said, Lord, you already know. You already knew this was coming. I trust you. You have figured out every single other thing that has happened in my life. You've got this too. And once I said that, just a peace came over my heart. So I encourage you to be constant in your prayer, to lay down before God, to find good people around you, and to continue to just lay yourself before him. And I promise you, he will hear you and he will work. So I want to say to go to your quiet place, close the door, listen, and he will speak. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us on The Vulnerable Woman. I can't tell you what it means to me that you have turned this on, listened, and taken time out of your day to join us. I'm so glad you're here. I encourage you to come back next week. We're gonna have a lot of exciting things, continue to tell my story a little bit and share with you, and we're gonna have guests. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. We would love to hear from you and to have other people listen. So thank you guys so much. Let's go out and let down our guard and be vulnerable.